Hello everyone, very good morning. Welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep. Welcome to our daily Hindu analysis. First, let's take a look at the topics we're going to cover in today's discussion. We have 4 important articles lined up for a detailed analysis and discussion. You can take a look at the list of topics selected over here. And after we cover these topics, we shall take a look at few prelims-oriented topics. So in total, I've chosen 9 articles covering 8 different topics. All these articles are very relevant for your prelims and as well as for your mains. So just stay with me for the next 1 hour, 10 minutes. I promise you that I will cover all these topics comprehensively. You need not go back and read the newspaper. You can save your time by attending these sessions every day live on our YouTube channel. All you have to do is support us by liking the video, share your comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. And also, before I start, I would like to remind you that after the session ends, please head to our official Telegram channel, because immediately after the session, we'll have a quiz on all these topics. It will help you revise these topics and prepare thoroughly for the upcoming prelims. The link for the Telegram channel also has been given in the description box below. So let's get started with the first article from page number 1 of the Delhi edition. This article refers to an amendment to the IT rules of 2021 that has been notified by the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. The Ministry of Electronics and IT has notified a new amendment to the IT rules of 2021. This amendment has been designed to tackle the menace of fake news. It essentially obligates social media firms and all online intermediaries to take down any fake news against the union government, which has been flagged by the PIB, the Press Information Bureau. This development, in fact, has been discussed previously as well. A few weeks before, there was a report pointing out that the government is considering a mechanism to tackle fake news, which is targeting the government of India. Any fake news against the union government, if it is flagged by the Press Information Bureau, which is the press organ of the government of India, then social media companies and all the online intermediaries, they will be bound to take down such content. This proposal was floated by the ministry a few months back. Now it has been notified by the ministry. So let's take a detailed look at this topic. First, let's understand what is the context here, what the notification is saying. Let's understand the menace of fake news and also talk about the attempts of the government to regulate fake news or to counter fake news. According to the recent notification, the IT rules of 2021, which was notified 2 years ago, has been amended. An amendment has been introduced to the IT rules, which deals with intermediary guidelines and digital media ethics code. These rules have been amended as per the provisions of the IT Act of 2000. The IT Act is the primary legal framework that we have in the country to regulate all forms of electronic commerce, to deal with cyber crimes and all forms of online offenses. So under the IT Act, IT Rules 2021 were notified to regulate social media and few other digital platforms. Now these rules have been amended by the ministry, and accordingly social media firms and other online intermediaries, they are required to ensure that fake news articles about the union government, if any fake news about the union government has been flagged by the Press Information Bureau, it has to be taken down from their platforms, or else they will be liable for legal prosecution. This is what the notification says. Now let's look at this in more detail. See, fake news has become a huge menace ever since media has been in usage or in circulation. Since age-old times, even when print or even when written forms of media came up, fake news has always been a menace since centuries. Later, when television, radio, and other advanced forms of communication came up, the spread of fake news increased further. But the biggest change happened with the evolution of new age media, that is online media, internet-based media, particularly your social media platforms. Because social media firms, be it Meta, be it Google, Twitter, all these social media platforms, they have tremendous reach. They have reach which was unimaginable in the era of television, radio, print, newspapers, etc. See, the menace of fake news has always existed. Generating fake news about an event, about an incident, using this to spread propaganda, spread misinformation about an institution, about an individual, or about an organization, has been an age-old practice. It's used by vested interests, governments, non-government entities to target their rivals, their enemies. It is used to carry out social engineering, to engineer the minds of the society, to change public opinion, to manipulate elections, to even instigate riots. So as a result, fake news has always been a social threat and a national security threat. But the menace has become much more serious as a national security threat because of its potential to spread on new age media platforms such as your social media platforms. Because the internet has given tremendous reach. These messages, fake messages, which are deliberately engineered, can go viral. It will have a very big audience, and if this is accepted as genuine information, it could result in large-scale social engineering, where the masses start believing in the fake news, in the false information. This could discredit an organization. It could discredit the government or a ruling party. It could bring defamation to the opposition parties, or it could instigate communal polarization or exploit the divides in the society. So vested interests can exploit fake news for various reasons, for spreading propaganda, for spreading misinformation, to carry out social engineering. And the end result could be destabilization of democracy itself, disruption of elections. For example, a foreign government, a hostile government, can disrupt elections in another country by spreading fake news through various media platforms. It could be used to widen the social divides, increase polarization, leading to riots and violence and even civil wars and unrest in a country. So that is why fake news has become a dangerous threat. The threat has increased exponentially with internet-based media because social media platforms have a tremendous reach, which was never possible with television, radio, or print. So that is why tackling fake news has become a major challenge for governments around the world. It's seen as not just a social threat, but also as a national security threat. So in this context, India has made several attempts to regulate social media and to tackle the menace of fake news. On one hand, social media firms on their own hand, on their own initiative, they have come up with certain self-regulating mechanisms. They have implemented few self-regulating standards to deal with the menace of fake news. For example, the users can report any content which is objectionable or which is fake. The companies will review the content, and if it is not meeting their community standards, they take down the content. Similarly, there are algorithms, bots which can detect fake news, check it with actual facts, and take down such wrong information. So social media firms have taken certain measures on their own, but it's not enough. They are not cooperating with the government. That has always been the allegation of the government, especially in India. The government of India has alleged that social media firms don't cooperate on time. They don't work with the government agencies and law enforcement agencies when it comes to dealing with fake news and misuse of social media. So as a result, the government felt the need to bring regulatory guidelines, which was notified under IT Rules 2021. These IT rules applied for social media intermediaries, digital news platforms, and your OTT platforms, that is your streaming platforms. The government provided for self-regulation for digital media and OTT platforms. For OTT platforms like Netflix, Hotstar, etc., self-regulation was promoted within the industry, within each company. And the Ministry of Information Broadcasting gave itself regulatory powers over OTT platforms. With regard to digital media, digital news platforms, self-regulation was promoted in order to protect the independence of the press, the freedom of speech and press. But on the other hand, for social media firms, the government went in for strict regulation. While self-regulation was promoted for digital news and OTT platforms, very strict regulation was promoted for social media intermediaries. They have been obligated to trace the originator of a message. If a miscreant has generated a fake message which has led to violence or a or a law and order situation, then social media companies have to work with the police and law enforcement to trace the originator of the message. They have to follow the compliance measures which have been mandated under the regulatory guidelines. They should appoint a compliance officer. They should appoint a grievance redressal officer. They should address the grievances raised by the users within a given period of time, within 15 days. The compliance officer has to report to the government on a monthly basis, submitting a report saying that these are the actions taken over the grievances that we have received, that this is the compliance of the company with regard to the regulatory standards. So all such guidelines were enforced on social media companies 2 years ago. And now the IT rules have been amended specifically with regard to social media firms to regulate and counter fake news against the government of India, against the union government. The government has said a fact check unit will be designated. Most likely this will be the PIB, the Press Information Bureau, which is the media arm, the communication arm of the government of India. The PIB will be designated as the nodal authority to check for fake news. It will coordinate with other relevant government agencies and departments and get their view as well. And once it certifies an online piece of content as fake news against the government of India, then the companies have to act according to the law. So PIB is being vested with these powers to point out what is fake news on social media against the union government. If such fake news is flagged by PIB, then there is a certain obligation on the social media companies. So let's see what the obligation is. But since it leads to removal of the content, there are concerns that it could lead to censorship through the government. Critics have pointed out that the government is giving itself these powers because PIB is very much a part of the government of India. PIB is not an independent organ. It's part of the government of India. It's the media communication arm of the government. So there is every possibility that the government, the ruling party, might misuse these powers to target any criticism and any opposition. Any article criticizing the government or highlighting its failures could be targeted. It could be flagged as fake news. And then companies might be forced to take down those articles and such content. That is a fear that has come up among civil society activists. Several critics, legal experts have pointed out that this could erode freedom of speech and expression and the freedom of press, which is a guaranteed fundamental right under Article 19. So there are concerns regarding these provisions. It has given rise to a concern that it could lead to government censorship, where the government could misuse the powers to target any criticism and opposition. But however, the government has clarified. The government has justified its position. The government has said, this new notification does not bring up the debate about free speech. The government has said this is not censorship at all, because it does not give rise to any form of censorship or violation of Article 19 according to the government of India. The government has said the new amendment which has been done, it does not mandate the companies to take down the content. It's not obligatory for them to take down the content which has been flagged as fake news. It only removes the safe harbor or the legal immunity that these companies enjoyed under Section 79 of the IT Act. Under IT Act of 2000, under Section 79, social media intermediaries, online intermediaries, they had been given a safe harbor, a legal immunity. According to this provision, these companies, these third-party platforms, they wouldn't be responsible for the content posted on their platforms by the users. Now, let's say I have a Facebook account or I have an Instagram account. I post something objectionable or I post a fake news on these platforms. The company itself will not be held liable for that, because the company is not owning the content, it's not posting the content. It's a user who's posting the content. So the user who's responsible for such fake news or misinformation, they would be held liable legally under the previous provisions. Because these companies were given an immunity, a legal immunity, a safe harbor provision was included under Section 79 of the IT Act. Now what the government has done, the government is removing this legal immunity. If PIB flags any content as fake news, if PIB gives out a notification that a particular article is fake news, then in relation to this particular incident or case, the legal immunity to the social media companies will not apply. The safe harbor will be removed. It's up to the companies whether to remove the content. If they want, they can take down the content if they don't want to face any legal consequences. Or they will have the choice to retain the content. It's well within their rights to retain the content. But however, they will be liable for legal proceedings in a court. The safe harbor is removed under section 79. So once some content or an article is flagged as fake news by PIB, they will be liable for court proceedings. Those companies will have to send a legal representative arguing in front of the court why this content was not taken down. Let's say there is a party who is aggrieved by these fake posts. If the party has approached the court filing defamation against the originator of the message, the company will also have to defend itself as to why such content was allowed to be posted and allowed to be posted and continue to remain on the platform despite the content being flagged as fake news. So the company will be open for legal consequences, legal liability, because the safe harbor has been removed. Because under section 3 of IT rules, hosting misinformation is treated as an offense. So essentially what you need to understand is that from the government's viewpoint, this is not censorship. The government is not ordering the companies to take down the content immediately. If PIB flags an article as fake news, then it is up to the companies to decide whether to take down the content or not. If they wish, they can take down the content, or if they retain it, they should be open for court proceedings, legal proceedings, because the safe harbor, the legal immunity will no longer protect them under section 79. This is the change that the new amendment has introduced into the IT rules of 2021. Is that clear? But critics are not satisfied with this. Critics are saying that this is a route for censorship. Any criticism against the government could be targeted because the government itself will be deciding what is fake news and what is not. If PIB is being given the powers, which is a government organ, then there is no transparency here. There is no accountability here. The government could misuse the powers to target any criticism and opposition and brand any content against the government as fake news, thus crippling freedom of speech and press under Article 90. So that is the concern of the critics, and these are the two arguments you need to understand. All right? Now let's move to the second and third article. Both are related to each other. It's related to the same topic. We have an important editorial on page number 8 related to India-Bhutan relations. It's a very, very important topic. I'll be covering this in complete detail. Because recently, Bhutan's king paid a historic visit to India just a few days back, and both countries have issued a joint statement and they've announced a number of important initiatives. Even though India and Bhutan are very, very close to each other, there are some new concerns that have come up in the relationship. That's why this visit becomes all the more important. So the editorial here is examining the recent visit of Bhutan's king to India. It also examines the history of India-Bhutan relations. There is a related column on page number 9 where the Hindu carries an interview with two important experts, a former diplomat and a strategic expert, on the current status of India-Bhutan relations. It especially examines the concerns that have come up and evaluates the history of India-Bhutan relations. So let's look at this topic in complete detail. Just to give you an overall idea about how close India-Bhutan are, let's look at some of the important initiatives between the two. See, India is the biggest development and trade partner for Bhutan. Please note down this point. Right from the beginning, from 1950s itself, we started financing the budget and the 5-year plans of Bhutan. Just like India had adopted 5-year plans, the planned model of development from Soviet Union, the same socialist model of development was adopted by Bhutan as well. Even Bhutan, even till date, has 5-year plans. And its annual budget, its development initiatives are financed through India's budget. if you look at India's union budget, there is a special allocation made to Bhutan. It's around 2,400 to 2,500 crore rupees every year in the last few years. We make the highest allocation in our foreign policy to Bhutan. The highest development assistance from India is set aside for Bhutan every year because it is getting direct budgetary support through the budget of India, through the union budget. A special allocation is made to Bhutan every year to finance its budget, to finance its 5-year plans. India has been the biggest development partner. For example, then Prime Minister Nehru launched an important initiative called Project Dantak in 1961. Under this initiative, India started building roads in Bhutan. For Bhutan, connectivity was a problem because I hope you know how difficult the Himalayan terrain, Himalayan geography can be. It's not easy to create roads and infrastructure. So India launched Project Dantak, a joint initiative with Bhutan, where we finance the construction of roads and other critical infrastructure in the country. This project continues even today. It has expanded. Under Project Dantak, we have built bridges, railway lines, we have set up schools and hospitals, power lines, power grids and hydropower plants. So India has given extensive development assistance to Bhutan under such development programs. Project Dantak is one of the key initiatives through which India has helped Bhutan in creating essential infrastructure. India is the biggest trading partner as well because Bhutan is a landlocked country and it can't depend on China because of the state of relations it has with China. So the only friend for Bhutan in the region is India. All essential supplies go from India. From food to medicines to fuel, all essential supplies are sent from India. So naturally, Bhutan is very, very dependent on India. Its economy is dependent on India. To access seaports, it's dependent on India. Right? For essential supplies, it is dependent on India. So to facilitate this trade, a free trade regime has been created. There is a free trade agreement between India and Bhutan to ensure that this trade dependency does not become a burden for Bhutan. So such unique arrangements have been created by India, and we have also invested heavily in Bhutan's infrastructure and especially in the hydropower sector. As a Himalayan state, it has tremendous hydropower potential. It has perennial rivers flowing at a fast rate, so you can easily generate hydroelectricity. And India has been the biggest investor in the hydro sector. We have executed many successful projects. And today, Bhutan has become an energy surplus country. At one point, Bhutan was dependent on India's support, India's development support. Now Bhutan has become more self-reliant because it is exporting electricity today. India has created an energy trading arrangement with the BBIN countries, with Bhutan, Bangladesh, India and Nepal. Through these Indian hydropower projects in Bhutan, the excess electricity is bought by India, and India uses its power grid that we have set up in this region, and we re-export the electricity to Bangladesh and Nepal, which are energy deficient. So Bhutan is earning a lot of revenue, and it has become the country with the highest per capita income in South Asia today. It's all because of India's help, India's investments in the hydropower sector. You can see the list of hydro projects which are underway right now. Recently, we inaugurated the Mangdechu hydropower plant, one of the largest hydro plants in the region. There are other projects going on, such as the Punat Sangchu 1 and Punat Sangchu 2. These are important hydropower projects that India is executing. There are at least a good 15 plus projects which are planned for the future. We've already built a good 10 hydropower projects in Bhutan. So India is a very big investor in this sector. We have made Bhutan more independent by enabling Bhutan to sell electricity to other countries. It's in this context that the recent visit of Bhutan's king becomes very, very important. Bhutan's fifth king, Jigme Wangchuk, paid an important visit, and a joint statement was brought out by the two countries. Let's see what new initiatives have been announced. That's very, very important. India has agreed to support Bhutan's next development plans, and we have extended standby lines of credit. India has always given concessional loans called lines of credit. We provide these lines of credit to our friendly countries. It's a concessional loan with very low interest rates and flexible repayment period. Through this, India has extended a ready finance facility for important development projects in Bhutan. We have promised to continue supporting these development initiatives, and a standby line of credit has been announced. Plus, we have set up a standby credit facility along with a currency swap arrangement to help Bhutan deal with any foreign exchange crisis. If Bhutan were to face any foreign exchange crisis, to help out the small country, we have agreed to set up a standby credit facility and a currency swap arrangement. This will allow Bhutan to not depend on IMF or Western countries and directly take support from India and overcome any financial crisis. Along with this, we have signed new initiatives with regard to hydropower sector. India has promised to complete the ongoing projects, especially Punat Sangchu and Sankosh. These projects have been delayed over the last few years due to funding issues, due to the pandemic, etc. So we have promised to fast track the ongoing projects and complete them as soon as possible. And along with this, India has agreed to increase the tariff on the Chukku hydro project, one of the oldest hydro projects. And we also agreed to buy more electricity from the Basochu power project. Essentially, India has agreed to pay more for purchasing electricity from Bhutan. This will bring more revenue to Bhutan. We have agreed to purchase more electricity as well, along with paying more tariff. So this will help Bhutan get more revenue, and it strengthens India-Bhutan relations. India could solve its energy problems, re-export the electricity to Bangladesh and Nepal as well. So these are some new commitments which have been made, and along with that, several other important initiatives have been taken up. New infrastructure projects have been announced, especially an integrated check post for movement of trucks at Jaigaon in West Bengal. Along the West Bengal-Bhutan border, an integrated check post will come up, similar to the ICP that we have at Wagah-Atari border between India and Pakistan. We have similar ICPs with India-Bangladesh as well to promote trade and movement of trucks and goods. So advanced trade facility will come up with an integrated check post at Jaigaon in West Bengal to promote the easy movement of trucks and goods. A checkpoint for third country nationals and cross-border rail link from Kokrajhar to Gelakpu has been finalized. A cross-border railway line will be set up connecting Kokrajhar in Assam with Gelakpu in Bhutan, and a checkpoint for third country citizens of other countries who are moving between India and Bhutan. A separate checkpoint will be created for them. India and Bhutan are stepping up relationship in the field of STEM, in the field of science, technology, engineering, medicine and mathematics, and space research especially. Skill development and startup cooperation has become a priority as Bhutan has been following the Transform initiative. Bhutan's king has launched the Transform initiative to transform Bhutan into a technology-based hub, and as a result, space cooperation has become a critical area. India and Bhutan are developing a joint satellite. ISRO has even set up a tracking station in Bhutan to track Indian launches, to Indian rockets and to track Indian satellites. So ISRO is setting up a tracking station, and we are building a satellite which ISRO will launch to provide satellite services to Bhutan. So space cooperation has become a priority, along with cooperation in the field of skill development, promoting research and development, cooperation between our startups, etc. The other concern that Bhutan has expressed is the migration of Bhutanese youth out of the country. See, most of the Bhutanese youth, they come to India for education. They usually finish their schooling, their college in India. But problem is, due to unemployment rates in Bhutan, due to the lack of employment opportunities, they move out of Bhutan and India. They seek out jobs in other countries, usually in Western countries. And this brain drain is affecting not just Bhutan, of course it affects India as well. So Bhutan has asked for India's help to retain the talent, to create adequate job opportunities in India and Bhutan so that these Bhutanese youth, right, who have the right skills, who have the right training, they can remain in India and Bhutan and contribute to the economy of Bhutan. So preventing this migration, this brain drain has become a concern for the Bhutanese government, and India has agreed to help Bhutan in this regard. So these are some important initiatives that were announced. But however, there is one big concern. There is a report that China and Bhutan are getting very close to resolving their border dispute. Recently, there have been reports that China, Bhutan have come very close to resolving their border dispute. Now this has raised concerns for India because even India and China have border disputes. And there is one particular point, a tri-junction point, where we have common concerns, where India, Bhutan have common concerns against China. That's why it becomes important to know a few basic details about China-Bhutan border dispute. You look at the map here, there are 3 locations where China-Bhutan have border disputes. This includes at the Doklam Plateau over here, which is located at the tri-junction of India, Bhutan and China, and at 2 other places, Jakarlung and Pasamlung. These are the 3 recognized border disputes between China and Bhutan. Since China does not recognize the British era boundaries, it has raised disputes at these 3 locations. And since 1984, 25 rounds of talks have taken place between China and Bhutan. Until recently, 24 rounds of talks had taken place, and just a few weeks back, the 25th round of negotiation took place between China and Bhutan. Previously, these border talks were facilitated by India. Until 2007, these border talks would be guided by India because Bhutan was guided by India in its foreign policy. But now that Bhutan is running its foreign policy independently, it conducts these negotiations with China independently. But however, Bhutan is so close to India that it always informs India and keeps India in the loop. So India had never any worries or concerns about these negotiations because India and Bhutan were on the same page. But recently a concern has come up because Bhutan's Prime Minister, Lote Tshering, he gave an interview to a European newspaper and he said, China-Bhutan have come very close to resolving the border dispute, especially the northern boundary dispute, which refers to the Doklam dispute and Jakarlung-Pasamlung dispute. And he said, maybe in another 1 or 2 meetings, the boundary dispute will be resolved. This was a statement given by Bhutan's Prime Minister. Now, this has taken few experts by shock, by surprise. The concern here is whether India has been kept in the loop or not. Because China has followed this tactic. China has used its leverage against Bhutan, it has pressurized Bhutan, and it has given an offer where China will get an advantageous position at Doklam Plateau over here, whereas Bhutan will get its issues resolved at Jakarlung and Pasamlung in the north. It's like a trade-off, an exchange that China has probably proposed. Now, this is of deep concern for India because of the importance of Doklam Plateau to India. See, this is the site of a major military standoff between India and China in 2017. Doklam is essentially Bhutanese territory. But in 2017, Chinese PLA had intruded and they were building a road in Bhutan's territory. And since India is responsible for defending Bhutan, the Indian army objected to the construction of the road. Indian troops along with Bhutanese troops, they confronted the Chinese PLA and it led to a clash. This border level clash escalated very quickly and turned into a major military standoff in 2017. India has always been concerned about Doklam because even though it's Bhutanese territory, it's of critical importance for India. Just look at the map. It's right next to the strategic Nathula Pass in Sikkim, which is a major military point between India and China. It overlooks the Chumbi Valley of China, the strategic Chumbi Valley, where PLA has an advantageous position. And it's believed that those who occupy Doklam, those who control Doklam, they get a vantage point, they get a leverage over the Siliguri corridor, which is a weak point for India. This narrow corridor of India you see here, it's hardly 22 kilometers in width. It's sandwiched between Nepal and Bangladesh, and that's the only link between Northeast India and rest of India. India always fears a possible Chinese incursion via Nathula and Doklam through this tri-junction point where China could potentially threaten India's Siliguri corridor, which is called the chicken's neck of India. Because it is vulnerable, it is possible for China to break off this weak point, thus cut off India's access to Northeast India. That's why Doklam region is of great strategic significance for India, for India's armed forces. So when this military standoff happened, India and Bhutan were on the same page. Together, we pushed back the Chinese intrusion, and finally, a mediated settlement was worked out for the time being. Now the concern is whether Bhutan, China are proceeding with the talks, with the boundary talks, by leaving India out. So there are some concerns that Bhutan may not be informing India about the progress that has been achieved. This is some concern expressed by few experts. But other experts have said that there is nothing to worry for India. Bhutan is a time-trusted friend. It would never betray India because they both have a unique relationship between them. Bhutan would definitely keep India in the loop, and most likely Indian government would have already been briefed by Bhutan regarding the boundary talks that have taken place. Even if China-Bhutan were to resolve their boundary dispute, it will happen only with India's consent. That is the close cooperation that exists between India and Bhutan. So some experts are saying that there is nothing to worry. But however, the concern has come up because Bhutan's Prime Minister made this statement publicly, and it has given rise to concern whether India has been kept in the loop or not. What if China is pushing Bhutan for a settlement? What if China gives itself an advantageous position at Doklam, which could threaten India, and give a concession at Jakarlung and Pasamlung? This is a concern, and here India needs to be a little careful, a little cautious, because it's better for India to maintain the strong ties with Bhutan, ensure Bhutan keeps India in the loop and keeps India informed about the ongoing boundary talks. Alright, so that is the concern you should be aware of, but most experts agree that there is nothing to be worried because Bhutan would never harm India's security interests. For more than 70 years, Bhutan has proven itself. India also has proven itself as a reliable partner to Bhutan. So it's a time-tested, a trust-based relationship, right? So that is what you need to understand from this important article. Now moving on, let's look at a small article from page number 10. The column is relevant for internal security. It deals with the strength, the vacancies in India's police forces and the representation of different communities and different classes in our police forces. There are a few statistics involved here. The stats themselves are not very important. You need not sit and by heart and mug up the statistics. But just an overall understanding of India's police forces, the structure, the representation, the strength and the vacancies can be important for your mains, especially in internal security. This article is based on the India Justice Report 2022. Please make a note of the report, could be relevant for your prelims. This report is brought out by Tata Trust. It gives a picture on our police forces. As you know, policing is a state subject. And India's police forces, they face many critical challenges. They're not well paid, they're not well trained, they're not highly motivated, and more importantly, they're not well structured. So there are many critical problems plaguing India's police forces. Various committees have looked into this, they have suggested police reforms, but eventually eventually the matter is left to the state governments to initiate the police reforms. We have had important committees such as the Dharamveer Commission. We had the second ARC, which gave out important recommendations regarding police reforms. We have a Supreme Court directive in the Prakash Singh case, in the landmark Prakash Singh case, through which the Supreme Court has given 7 directives for police reforms in the country. We have the Julio Ribeiro Committee, the Malimat Committee. So several committees have been constituted in the past to suggest police reforms. But most states have been very slow in implementing them. They have implemented a few and they have half-heartedly implemented a few recommendations. So this makes our policing system quite ineffective. Our police forces are overburdened, underpaid, and they're not given due recognition. Their basic necessities are not taken care of. Plus, it gives rise to heavy politicization of our police forces that leads to corruption, misuse of the police force that even leads to violation of human rights. One critical problem in our policing system is the strength and the vacancies that go unfilled. The sanctioned strength is not being met by the state governments. There are a lot of unfilled vacancies which is increasing the burden on the policing system. See, first of all, India is lagging behind the world when it comes to police to population ratio. According to the United Nations, the ideal police to population ratio should be 222 police per 1 lakh people. for every 1 lakh citizens, you should have at least 222 police officers. This is a UN recommended police to population ratio. In developed countries, the ratio is much more than this. They will have 250, 280 police officers per 1 lakh population. But can you guess what is the police to population ratio in India? It is extremely low. It is as low as around 151 policemen. That's the approximate figure according to 2020 data. The sanctioned strength for India's forces is 181 police personnel for 1 lakh population. That is the approved strength. But since we are not filling the vacancies, there are a lot of unfilled vacancies every year. There is a critical shortfall here, and actually our police to population ratio comes down to just 150 or 151. This is very, very low compared to other developing and other emerging countries. If you look at the BRICS countries, for example, the BRICS countries have a much higher police to population ratio. Many developing, even underdeveloped countries have a higher police to population ratio. So the second most populous country in the world has a very low police to population ratio, and this directly affects the functioning of our police. It affects law and order. It affects law enforcement because police forces are overburdened. Fewer and fewer police officers are being given more and more responsibilities. It increases the stress, the burden on them, also leads to more politicization, corruption, and misuse of the police system. This is a critical problem which needs to be addressed. That is exactly what the report is pointing out. It points out the alarming trend about increasing vacancies and how the vacancies are not being filled on time. According to this report brought out by Tata Trust, according to the India Justice Report, in the last 2 years, from 2020 to 2022, the vacancies in the police has increased from 20.3 to 22.1%. The unfilled vacancies has gone up compared to the sanctioned strength. See, first of all, our sanctioned strength is much below the global standards. And within that, we have a lot of unfilled vacancies. That is why our police to population ratio is extremely low. This is an important finding brought out by the report. Along with this, the report also looks at representation, social representation in our police forces. It's looking at how inclusive our police forces are. If you look at the weaker sections like SCs, STs, other backward classes, and especially women, they are all underrepresented in our police forces. This is another alarming finding. Right? In a democratic state, you would expect inclusive, equitable representation. That too in a critical organ of the government, which is the police. In such a critical organ of the government, there is underrepresentation of SCs, STs, OBCs, and women. Let me give you one stat you can remember. There is only one state in India, that is Karnataka, which has met the SC, ST, OBC quota in the police force. Every state has a certain quota, right? It's only Karnataka, in the entire country, it's only Karnataka police which has met the quota for SC, STs and OBCs in the police force. No other state has met the quota requirement. There is a huge gap. You can see the graph here. You can just take a look at the graph. You will see the gap between the reserved strength for these categories and the actual strength that they have managed to fill. There is a huge gap. Except for Karnataka here, no other state has managed to match the reserved seats, the reserved vacancies with the actual strength. The same goes for OBCs. And with regard to women, the situation is even more alarming. See, for women, there is a reservation in our police force. It varies from state to state. Like I said, policing is a state subject. From state to state, the women reservation keeps varying in the police force. In some states, it is just around 10%. In some states, it is 25%, 33, 35%. So women reservation in police forces ranges between 10 to 35%. But most of the states are falling behind here as well. Women are underrepresented. According to this report, it will take us 24 years to achieve 33% women representation in our police force. Now, this has serious implications for women's security, women's safety, for dealing with women issues, for dealing with rapes, molestation, then dowry cases, domestic violence, right, sexual harassment. These are very, very serious crimes which have deep social implications, And to solve them, to address this problem, you need more women representation in the police force. And most of the states are falling behind here as well. The share of women in police forces is falling behind. It will take India another 24 years to get to 33% women in our police forces. So these are some key findings of the report. Like I said, don't look at every statistic of the report. You can't sit and by heart everything. It's not possible, not needed for the exam. Just look at the trend, the broad trend that I've highlighted, and the key findings, the key observations with regard to the strength, the police to population ratio, the vacancies, and representation of SCs, STs, and women. Just a basic idea about this trend is enough when you're writing your mains answers. You can even expect a basic prelims question on the trend of representation in our police forces. Alright, so that is why the topic is relevant. Now coming to the next article from page number 10. It deals with the sanctions on Russian oil exports. As you know, Western countries have placed sanctions on the exports of Russian oil. But however, Western countries have not tried to cripple Russian oil exports entirely. Alright, because Russian oil exports are critical for global oil markets. Russia accounts for 10% of the global oil supply. Out of the total oil supply coming into the global oil markets, 10% is coming from Russia alone. So if Western sanctions cripple Russian oil exports entirely, it will disrupt the global economy. It could disrupt the global oil markets. It would affect every country. So that is why what the Western countries did was they limited the impact of the sanctions. Last year, they placed a price cap on Russian oil exports in order to limit the profits for Russia. Instead of cutting off Russian oil exports entirely and destabilizing the oil market, what they did was they placed a price cap. They said Russian oil cannot be sold at more than $60 per barrel. This was the price cap placed by G7 countries along with European Union and Australia. All the Western allies, they together placed these sanctions and the price cap so that it wouldn't completely cut off Russian oil from the markets, it wouldn't destabilize the oil markets. At the same time, it would cut off Russian profits. The profit margin would be cut, thereby crippling Russia's war in Ukraine. So that is why Western countries took a balanced approach. They placed a price cap of $60 per barrel on Russian oil exports. It meant no country should be buying oil from Russia below this price. Or no country should be paying more for Russian oil. They shouldn't purchase Russian oil at a higher price than the price cap. This is the maximum price that was set. But surprisingly, close Russian allies like India, China and others, they bypassed the sanctions entirely. As you know, we have very close relations with Russia. Similarly, China also has strategic ties with Russia. And also India does not follow unilateral sanctions, usually. We usually stay away from such unilateral sanctions. So India maintained its independent foreign policy. We continued buying Russian oil, that too at a higher price than the price cap. If price cap was $60, we have paid much more than that. Right? Because Russia was ready to give a reliable discounted supply of oil to India, and India was more than ready to buy this. It would bring down our import bill, plus it would guarantee our strategic relations with Russia as well. So countries like India, China and few others, they entirely bypassed the Western sanctions. They worked out alternate payment routes. But what is shocking and surprising is that even Western allies like Japan have started bypassing the sanctions. Especially Japan has bypassed the price cap. It has bought Russian oil at more than $60 per barrel. Is that clear? It has bought Russian oil at more than $60 per barrel, which was the price cap set by the Western countries. It shows that Japan is circumventing the sanctions against Russia. Now, why are countries doing this? That's the question. See, countries will always look after their respective economic interests. If there is someone out there selling reliable oil at a discounted price, they will go ahead and purchase that. Russian Ural, which is the Russian oil supply, which is known for its high quality, Russian Urals, it comes from the Ural basin. It's also called Urals or Urals. Right? The Russian oil is usually referred to as Russian Urals or Russian Urals. It's a highly prized oil asset, a fossil fuel asset. Most countries look to procure this asset, and especially in the Far East region of Russia, in the Siberia region, you have the Sakhalin Islands. If you open the map of the Russian Far East and look at the Sakhalin region, Russia has a lot of oil and gas reserves over here, which is very close to Japan. In fact, India also has investments at Sakhalin oil and gas reserves. India's ONGC Videsh Limited has made investments with Russian agencies at Sakhalin gas reserves. So Japan, which is very close to Sakhalin, finds it lucrative to procure Russian oil and gas from here. It suits Japanese economic interests. So Japan has breached the Western price cap for the economic benefits, and essentially it has circumvented the sanctions on Russian oil. Now this is what experts were pointing out earlier. They said when the price cap was imposed and the sanctions were imposed, they said it's going to be difficult to enforce this. Countries will bypass, because if you set a price cap of $60 per barrel, if Russia tries to sell it even at $62 or $65 per barrel, countries will still be incentivized. If they are getting a reliable supply, a continuous guaranteed supply, countries will go out and buy Russian oil, bypassing the sanctions and the price cap. So this shows the ineffectiveness of Western sanctions. It shows how countries look after their own self-interests when it comes to their economy and their strategic interests. Western ally Japan has circumvented the sanctions just like India, China and others have done. Alright, so that is what we need to take away from this article. Now we come to the last part of today's discussion. We shall take a look at 4 important articles from a prelims point of view. On page number 5, we have an article related to the amendment of IT rules that we discussed earlier. Remember, we spoke about how IT rules were amended to deal with fake news. The same IT rules has been amended to deal with online real money gambling or real money gaming. I'm sure all of you would have seen a lot of ads on YouTube, on social media, even in newspapers regarding various betting apps, or you have these Super League games related to cricket, football, etc. Right? Or you in general have gaming and gambling and betting apps that are there, where you actually use your real money to bet and play games where either you win money or you lose money. Right? There are many such games available today online. It's not just betting and gambling, even your regular video games where real money is used falls into this category. Right? Such games can get very dangerous when people are putting their real money and playing with other opponents, that too on the online format. The chances are very high, the risk is very high of losing all their wealth. People have lost their entire wealth through such games. It eventually leads to gambling, betting addiction as well. It promotes gambling and betting, which is illegal. So to regulate the online gaming industry, especially where real money is involved, the government was looking at bringing out a set of regulations. Now finally, under the IT rules of 2021, an amendment has been added which provides for regulation of this critical industry. Is that clear? The Ministry of Electronics and IT, which is the nodal ministry, has notified that online real money games will be regulated. These companies cannot operate freely anymore. There will be a strict regulation here. The government is promoting self-regulation. Just like self-regulation was promoted for OTT platforms, for digital news platforms. Similarly, self-regulating bodies will be set up under these new rules, and these gaming platforms have to be certified by the self-regulatory body. They have to meet certain conditions laid down by the government. The self-regulatory body will give permission to these apps and companies to run their games. Only those who are permitted can operate as legal gaming entities. Those who are not permitted, they could be labeled as betting and gambling applications, which is an offense. And state governments can take action against such companies and such applications. Is that clear? Regulation is being introduced to the online real money gaming industry. These reforms have been welcomed by the industry as well because genuine gaming applications will benefit from this. It will help in promoting the online gaming industry, streamlining the gaming industry, and only those apps, those games which are permitted by the regulatory body will be legal. Rest, which don't get the permission, which don't meet the standards, they will be treated as betting and gambling applications which are illegal, and states can take legal action against them. So these self-regulatory standards are being brought out, and it also has an obligation for media and social media firms to refrain from carrying advertisements that promote such harmful games that involves real money. You might have seen, like I said, in various newspapers, in various social media platforms, right? You'll see a lot of ads related to these gaming applications where real money is involved. This is irresponsible on the part of the media as well to carry such advertisements. Just like newspapers and media cannot carry advertisements related to cigarette and alcohol, these ads also should not be carried by them. That is why the government has issued an advisory. Under the new rules, media platforms will have to comply. They should not be carrying these ads henceforth, or else they will face legal action from the government. These are the important changes that have been introduced through the amendment introduced to the IT rules. Self-regulation is being promoted to the real money online gaming industry. Those who don't get the permission, they will be treated as betting and gambling applications against whom state governments can take action. And media outlets, be it newspapers, television, radio, or internet-based media platforms, they should not carry advertisements of these applications. These are the changes that have been brought out, and it could be very relevant for your prelims and of course for your mains as well. Next, another article on page number 12, the Union Cabinet has notified the Indian Space Policy 2023. It's a very big development in the space sector. Here we'll just look at the basics, but we will definitely have a more detailed discussion on this in the coming days. The further details of the policy will be brought out. There will be detailed articles, editorials related to this. So we will carry out a thorough discussion on the Indian Space Policy 2023. But now just understand the basics here. The Union Cabinet, the Cabinet Committee on Security, has approved the Indian Space Policy 2023 to streamline the role of public space agencies and also promote private participation in the space industry. As you know, the space sector was largely monopolized by the public sector, that is by ISRO. But now, in the last few years, the government has opened up the space sector for private participation, and we have various arms of ISRO, various branches of the Department of Space that are promoting private participation in the space industry. For example, we already had Antrix Corporation that was promoting launches of foreign satellites on ISRO's rockets. It was seen as the commercial arm of ISRO. And two new entities have been set up, two public sector units. One is New Space India Limited, NSIL. NSIL focuses on strategic activities in the space domain. And INSpace, or InSpace, which stands for Indian National Space Promotion and Authorization Center, which is another public sector unit of the Department of Space, which is looking to promote private participation in our space activities. See, going forward, the focus of India is to ensure that ISRO, which is the main space agency of India, will focus on research and development. It will focus on emerging technologies, developing new technologies, focusing on further exploratory missions to the Mars and beyond, right? But regular tasks such as assembling a satellite, building a rocket, assembling a launch vehicle, managing these basic space assets and the space manufacturing, all of this can be outsourced. This technology has been perfected by ISRO. So this technology can be outsourced to the private industry. Private industry can start producing the satellites, the rockets, the launch vehicles, and even managing the launches as well, like it is done in the United States. So India is setting itself on similar path. So to promote the privatization of space, to promote more startups in the space sector, and to promote greater collaboration between the government and the private industries, and ensure ISRO gets more time and space and money to focus on research and space exploration, this policy has been brought out. It streamlines the roles, responsibilities of all the organizations. It streamlines the role of ISRO. It clearly mentions ISRO will focus on R&D. It will focus on long-term research, developing new technologies, new missions. Whereas NSIL will focus on strategic activities in the space domain. In space, will promote interaction between the government and the private entities. It will promote privatization of the space sector. Right? The roles have been clearly defined here, and it looks to open up India's space sector for private participation, including foreign participation. All right? That is why the policy is very, very important. We'll look at further details once we get more information about it. We will have more articles. We will have a detailed discussion on this. Along with this, the cabinet has taken another important decision. It has approved the setting up of LIGO Observatory in India. LIGO stands for Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory. LIGO experiments are large particle physics experiments which are used to detect gravitational waves that cause a ripple in the time-space fabric. Right? Gravitational waves were predicted by Albert Einstein, and it helps in understanding the universe. It helps in understanding the very evolution of the universe. Gravitational waves are critical in space research and particle physics as well, and LIGO observatories are set up. In US, you have two major LIGO observatories. All right? So outside of US, the first major LIGO observatory is coming up in India. This agreement was signed between India and US in 2016. All right? Currently, the two major LIGO observatories are in the US itself, both of them, both the projects. One of them detected a gravitational wave as well a few years back. Right? A similar LIGO observatory will come up in India with the help of US and other countries like Australia, UK and Germany. It's a collaborative project involving India. It will come up in the Hingoli district of Maharashtra. In the Hingoli district of Maharashtra, the LIGO observatory in India will come up, and the Union Cabinet has approved this project, and very soon India will be leading this field of space research and gravitational wave research along with US and other leading countries. So that's an important fact for your prelims. Next, 7th article on page 14 related to fortified rice, which is distributed through our PDS and other nutrition related schemes and programs. As you know, one of the critical problems in developing countries like India is the lack of micronutrients in our nutrition, in our diet. Especially the poor, weaker sections, women and children. They don't get enough adequate nutrients, micronutrients, like iron, folic acid, then essential vitamins, vitamin A, B, B12, B3, B6, etc. All these micronutrients are essential in the right quantity for a healthy living. Or else the deficiency will cause many diseases, many disorders. So that is why, to address the micronutrient deficiency, India had launched the ambitious fortified rice program, where rice, which is a staple food in India, across India rice is a staple, the rice was fortified with added micronutrients. This rice is being distributed through the targeted public distribution system, through the ration shops, also through midday meal schemes, through the Pradhan Mantri Poshan Yojana, which focuses on nutrition and tackling hunger and malnutrition, and also through ICDS, Integrated Child Development Scheme. All the nutrition-oriented schemes, through them, fortified rice has been distributed. Fortified rice is essentially where rice has been deliberately fortified to increase the micronutrient constitution. It's mixed in the right composition, it does not cause any harm to human health. In the right concentration, micronutrients are added to such food items which are consumed on a regular daily basis by the large population. This program is regulated, certified by the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, and there are various technologies through which rice can be fortified. You can either coat or dust the micronutrients on the rice, or the most popular method is called extrusion, where rice kernels are manufactured using an extruder machine where the micronutrients are added to produce this rice. And these rice grains, these rice kernels which are produced, which are rich in micronutrients, they are mixed with your regular rice. They are blended. the standard in India is that for every 1 kg of rice, 10 grams of fortified rice kernel should be blended. Fortified rice kernels are rich in iron, in folic acid, in all essential micronutrients, including essential vitamins, vitamin A, B12, B3, B6, etc. Using all these micronutrients, these rice kernels are produced artificially, and 10 grams of it is mixed with 1 kilogram of rice. That is sufficient to meet our micronutrient requirement. And this fortified rice is distributed through all these food security schemes. So according to the article, the distribution of fortified rice through PDS is on track. Under second phase of distribution, 100% target has been achieved. In 269 districts across 27 states, 100% distribution of fortified rice has been achieved, which is a big success as far as promoting micronutrient in the diet is concerned. So that is why you should know what is fortified rice, how is it mixed with regular rice to be distributed through the PDS. Now coming to the last article from page 16, it's related to the Foreign Trade Policy 2023 that was recently brought out by the government. Under the new foreign trade policy, second-hand imports are being promoted. Under the foreign trade policy, the import of second-hand goods has been opened up because this will promote the repair and refurbishing industry in India. All right? But the condition is that these second-hand goods, they will have to be re-exported. This is the condition. Because these second-hand items can be quite dangerous. Because usually, the used items, they would have reached the end of their shelf life. And especially second-hand goods like electronic items, appliances, right? Electronic items, they contain a lot of hazardous substances and they could be harmful for the environment. Usually from developed countries, used products, especially e-waste, electronic waste is dumped on developing countries like India. This could lead to environmental damage. It could affect human health and the environment as well. That has always been a concern. So what India has done is that it has said second-hand imports is allowed. There is no limit on it. Second-hand imports can take place freely, but the only condition is after repairing it, after refurbishing the item, we have to re-export this to another country while meeting all the environmental safety standards. This will boost our recycling industry, refurbishing, repair industry. It will create lakhs of jobs in India. That is why the foreign trade policy is allowing second-hand imports. All right? The condition is it should not be sold in the Indian market. Once these goods are repaired and refurbished, it has to be re-exported. Only then second-hand imports will be allowed without any limit. And the repair, refurbishing units in India, they have to follow the environmental standards to ensure these goods do not cause any hazard to the environment and human health. That's the only condition. And it will allow for free import of second-hand goods into India. So that's an important point for prelims with regard to foreign trade policy. So please take up the mains questions for your practice. These are two topics I've discussed in detail. I hope all of you write an answer to this. Post your answers in the answer writing portal, for which link has been given in the description. I hope it was a good productive session. I hope you've understood all the 8 or 9 topics that I've covered today. Do let me know how it went in the comment section below. All right. So do like the video, subscribe to our channel, and do head to our Telegram channel to try out a quiz on these topics that we have discussed. So that is it from my side. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.